The wind was sharp across the desert. Sand raced through the air like angry wasps. The sun was brutal and bright above, offering no mercy. Every living thing had either hidden or died long ago in this place. And yet, something moved through the storm like a ghost with no direction. Her feet dragged behind her. Each step was slower than the last. Her silver skin, once smooth and glowing, was now covered in dust and blood. She was alien, clearly not from this world. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes wide with fear. Her hands trembled as she reached out, searching for something, anything that could help her survive. The crash had thrown her far from her vessel. That much she remembered. The warship had been hit by something she never saw. One moment she was flying above Sector 9, and the next falling, spinning, flames in every direction. Then darkness. Now she was here, with cracked ribs and a broken translator. She stumbled over a dune and fell to her knees. The sand burned her palms. Her voice cracked as she cried out for help. No one answered, no allies, no machines, no signal. Just the desert and death creeping closer by the second. A shadow passed over her. She looked up quickly, her vision blurry. At first, she thought it was another hallucination. A tall figure stood against the bright sun. His face was wrapped in cloth, his body covered in layers of rough clothes. A long rifle rested on his back. A human nomad. The man stepped forward slowly. His boots sunk into the sand. He didn't speak. He simply knelt beside her and opened a small water flask. She flinched when he reached for her hand. But then she saw it. The water, real, clean, cold. He gently placed the flask to her lips and tipped it. She drank with shaking hands. No words were exchanged. The human watched her with calm, sharp eyes. He had seen many things in the desert, but never this. Never an alien girl half dead under the twin suns. He knew if he left her there, she'd be gone before nightfall. So he did something strange. He pulled out a blanket and wrapped her in it. She tried to speak. Her voice was broken, weak. Her language didn't match his, but he seemed to understand anyway. He made a simple gesture stay. Then he turned and began setting up a small shelter made of canvas and poles. She lay there, still dizzy, trying to understand why he was helping. The desert was cruel. It didn't forgive weakness. But the human moved like he was born in it. Everything he did was calm, quick, and practiced. She watched him fix the shelter, build a small heat reflector, and gather rocks around them for safety. Every motion told her one thing. This man had survived many storms. Night came fast in the desert. The heat vanished. Cold crept in like a knife. The stars above were endless. She stared at them as she huddled beside the fire he made. He handed her a strange dry food. It tasted bitter but gave her strength. She watched him carefully. Still no words. But she felt something rare in this galaxy trust. She didn't know the human's name. He never asked for hers. Still, in that moment, they weren't soldier and stranger. They were just two lives fighting to stay warm in the dark. He placed a new blanket over her and laid down beside the fire. His weapon was close, but so was his kindness. Far in the distance, hidden from the flames, something else was watching. A drone, hovering just below the wind, recording every movement. It sent images back to orbit, back to the warfleet that had once tried to destroy her ship. The enemy had found her again. The human woke before dawn. He always did. Years in the desert taught him how to read the wind, how to listen to the sand. Something was wrong. The silence felt tight, like breath held too long. He looked toward the north and narrowed his eyes. Something shimmered against the horizon. She stirred awake. Her eyes met his. He didn't speak. He just pointed toward the dark line moving across the sky. Ships, fast, low, armed. She tensed. Her body ached from the crash, but fear lit her nerves. Again, she knew what was coming. She whispered one word, her voice barely working. "Hunters." The human stood up. He reached for his rifle and checked the scope. Then he looked back at her. She saw the change in his eyes. The calm was gone. Now there was fire. He wasn't going to run. He wasn't going to hide. He had just met her. But he was ready to fight. He pulled her gently to her feet. She leaned on him. The two of them, wounded and mismatched, started walking toward the nearest rock formation. The desert behind them swallowed their footprints. Ahead, the wind picked up again. War had come to the sands, and this time it would not be quiet. They reached the rocks just as the sun began to rise. The desert was wide and burning, but the stones offered shadows. The human helped her sit down behind a slanted boulder. He checked the wind. It was blowing strong from the west. That meant cover. That meant he had a chance. The alien girl rapped, the blanket tighter around herself. Her body was still weak. Her legs shook, but her mind was clearer now. She saw how the man moved, how he placed his steps carefully, how he checked the sky with every few breaths. He wasn't just a nomad. He was a survivor. She wanted to thank him, but her throat still burned. Her voice came out as clicks and soft gasps. The translator on her wrist sparked again, trying to work. The screen glitched, static. Then, for a brief moment, a word translated, "danger." He didn't need the translator to understand that. He had already seen the enemy ship's shape. Triangular, fast, not meant for cargo. These were hunters, scavenger killers from the outer belt. They didn't take prisoners. They took trophies. He crouched and opened his bag. Inside were tools. Not many, but enough. Wires, metal clips, and a small energy core. He began shaping a trap with his bare hands. The alien girl tilted her head, watching him fold metal like paper. He was building something quick. Something deadly. She reached into her own gear pouch and pulled out a tiny shard. A survival knife, curved and sharp. She offered it to him. He stared at her for a moment, then accepted the blade with a nod. No words, just understanding. In the desert, kindness was rare. Trust was rarer. Minutes passed. The sound of engines grew louder. She peeked over the rock edge. A dark ship slid. Across the sky, sand kicked up around it. 3 figures jumped down. They were tall, armored, and armed. Their eyes glowed red behind masks. They spread out in a triangle and moved forward slowly. The human didn't panic. He placed the trap at the narrowest part of the rocks, where the wind always cut sharpest. Then he climbed higher without making a sound. He lay flat, his rifle ready. The sun behind him turned his silhouette into stone. She held her breath. The enemy moved closer. One of them stopped and scanned the sand. He shouted something in broken dialect. The others spread out. The hunter on the left stepped over the trap without knowing it. Then the center one triggered it. A sharp flash. Energy burst upward, throwing sand and fire. The hunter screamed and collapsed, armor torn open. The other 2 spun toward the sound. That's when the human fired. One shot, clean. The second hunter fell before he could turn fully. The last enemy ran for cover. He fired a plasma bolt toward the rocks. The human ducked. The beam hissed as it passed by. Dust sprayed the alien girl's face. Her hands curled into fists. She grabbed a loose stone and waited. The hunter moved fast, trying to flank, but the human had already moved again. He circled wide. His boots didn't make a sound. The hunter reached the edge of the rocks and stepped forward. The alien girl rose and threw the stone with all her strength. It hit the hunter's head, just enough to make him pause. The human appeared behind him and struck hard with the curved blade. 1 deep cut. The hunter fell without a sound. Blood steamed in the morning air. Then there was silence. Just wind and breath and the crackle of sand. She stood slowly. Her legs felt stronger. Her body still hurt, but her heart was awake. She looked at the human and saw the dust on his face, the quiet fire in his eyes. He wiped the blade and gave it back to her, not a word spoken. Not needed. They returned to the fire as the sun climbed higher. He took down the shelter quickly. Time to move again. The smoke from the trap might call others. Bigger ones, worse ones. He handed her a second water flask. She took it without hesitation. As they walked, she turned on her translator again. This time it sparked and hummed. A faint voice came through. It was hers, played back in translation. "Why help me?" she asked. Her eyes studied him, waiting. The human stopped walking. He looked at her. Then, in a quiet voice, he answered, "You were dying, that's enough reason." Then he turned and walked again. She followed without question. Far above them, high in orbit, a signal flared to life. The hunters had sent a last beacon before death. Now others knew where she was. Others far more powerful than simple scavengers. A new threat stirred in the dark. But down in the desert, under twin suns, the human and the alien girl kept moving, step by step, toward the edge of survival, toward something neither of them yet understood. They walked through the heat without speaking. The sun rose high above them, pressing down like a heavy weight. The alien girl's legs still hurt, but she kept moving. The human stayed a few steps ahead, always scanning the land. Every hill, every shimmer in the sand was checked before he stepped forward. He led her toward a canyon. It was hidden between jagged rocks and dry trees with white branches. The shade felt like a gift from the sky. Birds circled above, but made no sound. The girl looked up at them, unsure if they were natural or machines. He motioned for her to stay quiet. Then he crouched low and moved to the canyon edge. A narrow stream of water ran through the bottom. It was rare, too rare to trust. He scanned the area with a small device. The screen flashed green. No toxins, no traps. They could drink. She knelt beside the stream and dipped her hands in the cold water. It made her flinch. But she smiled for the first time. Her silver skin looked clearer in the shade. Her eyes were less foggy. She washed her face, then looked toward the human. He didn't smile, but he watched her closely. Then he bent down, filled 2 containers, and packed them. He moved like he always expected danger. Even in moments of peace, his guard stayed up. She noticed how often he checked the sky and horizon. This man had lost something once. And he was not going to lose again. They rested inside the canyon wall under a ledge. The rocks above kept them hidden. He laid out dry food. She chewed slowly. It still tasted like dust and ash. But it was food. The kind of food made for hard journeys. Not for pleasure. Only for survival. The translator on her wrist buzzed again. She tapped it twice. A weak signal blinked across the display. She held her breath and raised it to the sky. A red dot flashed. Coordinates. Then it faded. Not enough strength to send. But maybe enough to track. She looked at the human. He glanced at the screen, then at her eyes. She nodded once. He understood. Somewhere out there was a safe place. Maybe a friendly ship. Maybe shelter, but it was far. And they would need to cross dangerous land to reach it. His eyes narrowed with focus. He didn't hesitate. They left before the sun dipped too low. The canyon offered one narrow path out. But it also narrowed their options. If something came after them, they'd have no way to escape. The girl held the survival blade now. The human gave her his backup knife too. She felt the weight in her hand. It gave her a strange sense of strength. As they moved between tall rocks, the air shifted. A humming sound began, too low for normal ears. But she heard it first. Her eyes widened. She reached for the human and pointed to the sky. He paused. Then he heard it too. A scout drone. The drone swept over the canyon with a slow scan light. They ducked behind a boulder. The human covered her with his body, keeping her hidden. The drone paused, as if sensing something. Then it moved on. They didn't breathe until the sound faded. She whispered through the translator. "There. Searching. Fast." He nodded, then pointed to a narrow cave opening on the left wall. She followed without question. Inside, it was tight and dry. The walls were carved long ago by forgotten water. Now it was just a tunnel to safety. They moved deeper until the light was gone. The girl lit a soft blue beam from her gear. The tunnel bent sharply, then widened. Inside was a hollow chamber with broken crates and old symbols on the walls. She paused. Her eyes traced the writing. It was old. Older than her people. This place was ancient. The human checked the crates. Most were empty. One had old batteries. Another had dried food cubes sealed in foil. He pocketed a few. Then he stopped. At something strange. A crate with a symbol even he didn't recognize. When he touched it, the lid clicked. Inside was a weapon. Long and sleek, not human-made. Not like her people's design either. Something older, something lost. The girl stepped closer and touched the side. The weapon glowed slightly. Recognized. Her touch, it was locked to her DNA. Her voice trembled. "This belonged to my ancestors." She picked it up slowly. Her hands shook. The human didn't stop her. He simply watched. He knew what this meant. She was more than a crash survivor. More than just a lost wanderer. She was tied to something ancient, something powerful. And someone wanted her gone because of it. Far above, in the deep clouds, another ship moved silently. This one was larger. Heavily armed. Its scanners found the echo of her energy signature. It began descent. The real hunt was about to begin. This time, the enemy wouldn't send scouts. They would send killers. But in the heart of the canyon, with an ancient weapon now in her hand, the girl no longer felt weak. The desert had not killed her. The man had not abandoned her. And the past had just armed her with purpose. Asterisk. The chamber echoed with silence. Dust floated in the air like forgotten thoughts. The alien girl gripped the weapon tightly. It hummed in her hands, alive. It was no ordinary tool. This was something built to protect an empire long gone. The moment she touched it, something in her heart shifted. She turned to the human. Her voice, through the translator, was slow but clear. "I remember something. A symbol. A story told when I was a child." She pointed at the wall. The carvings matched what she remembered. A warrior holding a staff, surrounded by stars. Her people called it the Guardian's Mark. The human stepped closer. He didn't understand the legend, but he understood the look in her eyes. She wasn't just holding a weapon. She was holding history. Something powerful was hidden in her bloodline. Something that made her a target, not just a survivor. Not just a girl, the weapon. Folded with a soft hiss. Its edges shifted into a long staff, then a blade. She tapped a switch, and it locked into place. Energy pulsed down the handle. The human whistled under his breath. He had seen alien tech before, but nothing like this. It was clean, elegant, dangerous. He reached into his pack and handed her one of the dried food cubes. She took it and ate. While staring at the wall, her thoughts were racing. "They're not just hunting me because I escaped," she said. "They're hunting me because of what I carry." She tapped her chest softly. A key. They rested for only a short time. The human checked his watch. Time moved fast in the wild. The ship that spotted her would be closing in. He packed quickly. She followed. The weapon now hung across her back, connected by a magnet strap. Her steps were firmer now. No longer weak, the tunnel curved again. It opened to a sharp slope leading back to the surface. When they climbed out, The desert was quiet. Too quiet. The human narrowed his eyes. He dropped to one knee and pressed his hand to the sand. No vibration. That meant the heavy ship hadn't landed yet. But it was close. They moved east, using jagged stone ridges for cover. The alien girl tried to mark their location on her device. The signal was still faint. But the coordinates grew stronger with every step. She pointed to the hills ahead. That way. There's a buried site near the black rocks. It might have a beacon. As they climbed the next dune, a sudden noise tore through the sky. The sound of engines. Low and wide, the air shimmered above them. A dark shadow stretched over the sand. The ship was here. It had arrived fast without warning. It dropped low, kicking up a storm of sand. The human grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a rock outcrop. They ducked low as the ship landed with a deep thud. The ramp opened. 5 figures stepped out. These weren't hunters. They were elite. Black armor, no markings, no faces. Just weapons and precision. They spread out quickly. Each moved like they had trained for years in close terrain. The human knew their kind. Not pirates, not random killers. These were silencers. Their job wasn't to capture. It was to erase. He loaded his rifle and checked the wind. She readied her blade weapon. They nodded at each other. No need for more words. If they didn't fight now, they would never get another chance. The rocks gave cover, but not forever. They had to strike smart and fast. The first enemy moved too. Close, the girl waited, then leapt with precision. Her weapon slashed through his chest armor. Sparks flew. He dropped without a sound. The others turned, but too late. The human shot the next one through the neck. One clean shot, then another. 3 down. The last 2 retreated behind the ship's landing gear. The human rolled left, drawing. Their fire. The girl ran right, circling around them. She slammed her weapon into the gear, causing it to shake. One of the soldiers stumbled. She took him down with 2 fast strikes. The final one turned to run. The human caught him with a shot to the leg. The enemy dropped. The girl stood over him. "Why me?" she asked through the translator. The soldier spat sand and answered in her language. "You are the last of the vault keepers. That weapon leads to what they fear." Before they could ask more, he pressed a device on his chest. His body lit up and exploded into dust. Nothing remained but his shadow in the sand. The girl looked at the human. He gave a slow nod. The silence said it all. No one wanted her alive. Not because of who she was, but because of what she could unlock. They ran toward the black rocks. The wind screamed behind them. The ship they fought near began to glow from inside. It would self-destruct soon. The enemy wanted no proof left behind. The human didn't look back. Neither did she. Forward was the only direction now. When they reached the black stones, her device pulsed strong. She fell to her knees and brushed the sand aside. Underneath, a metal circle. An old hatch. She placed her hand on it. It responded to her touch. The center glowed blue and rotated. The door opened with a deep click. Inside, stairs led downward into darkness. She looked at the human. He nodded. Then they stepped into the unknown, not just running anymore. Now they were heading into something older than war, older than fear. A hidden truth buried in the bones of the desert, asterisk. The stairway was narrow and cold. Sand had not reached this deep. The walls were smooth, built from black metal that hummed with energy. Each step echoed like a whisper in a tomb. The girl held the glowing weapon in front of her, lighting the way forward. The human followed close behind. His rifle was ready. His breath was steady. He had never been inside a place like this. It felt older than cities, older than war. Every sound was strange. Every shadow seemed to breathe. But he didn't stop. He trusted her now. Fully, the deeper they went, the colder it became. The air felt different, heavy, as if the tunnel didn't want them there, but the door had opened for her. That meant she belonged. Somewhere in her blood, this place had been waiting for her return. They reached a large chamber, round, silent. A pillar stood in the center, rising from the floor to the ceiling. Symbols glowed along its surface. The girl stepped forward. Her hand moved without thinking. She touched the symbols. One by one, the lights followed her fingers. A deep sound filled the room, like an engine waking after centuries of sleep. Lights came alive in the walls. A hidden door opened behind the pillar. Inside was a platform surrounded by floating crystals. The air shimmered with data. It was a vault of memory. The girl stepped onto the platform. The crystals began to circle her. Her eyes glowed faintly. The translator picked up a pulse. Words in her ancient language filled the air. Vault Keeper confirmed. Bloodline secure. Unlocking Record 3. Images appeared in the air. A star map. A fleet. Then a war. Her ancestors had hidden something powerful before their empire fell. A core, not a weapon, but knowledge. A map to the real history of their people. One that the enemy wanted buried forever. The human watched silently. He couldn't understand the language, but he understood the weight in her eyes. She was not just hunted because she survived. She was hunted because she carried the truth. A truth others had erased from time. She stepped back from the platform. The crystals slowed, then froze in place. They want to destroy this, she said softly. If this reaches the stars, their lies fall apart. Their power breaks. That's why I must live. That's why they chase me. He looked at her for a moment, then nodded once. He didn't need more reason. She had given him purpose again, not just survival, not just sand and storms. He had a cause, and a companion worth fighting for. Suddenly, the ground shook. Dust rained from above. The vault lights blinked, then dimmed. She grabbed the weapon. He raised his rifle. The tremor stopped. Then came a second, louder, closer. A breach was happening. Above them, a section of the wall shifted. A defense node unfolded from the ceiling. A thin beam scanned the two of them. The girl raised her hand. The beam paused. Recognized, said a cold voice. Defense protocols transferred to Vault Keeper. She turned to the human. The vault has auto-defense, but not enough to stop a full strike team. We must leave. Soon, but first, I must download the records. He nodded and watched the door. She returned to the platform. The crystals moved faster now. A data spike extended from the center. She connected her wrist device. The room pulsed with light. Outside, the tremors grew louder. Up on the surface, black dropships landed near the canyon. Soldiers in armored suits spread out information. They carried magnetic hammers and pulse rifles. No warning, no negotiation. They were here to erase everything. And everyone, inside the vault. The girl's device blinked green. Download complete. It said. She pulled the cord and stepped down. The human opened a side hatch, a narrow escape tunnel. Cold air rushed in. The shaking grew worse. The enemy was close. They ran through the tunnel. Every light blinked behind them. The vault was shutting down, hiding again, until the next Vault Keeper came. If there ever would be another. She looked back one last time, then followed him into the dark. They emerged behind the canyon wall. The sun was falling. Long shadows covered the rocks. The human raised his scope. He counted the soldiers. At least 20, maybe more. He looked at her. She looked at the ridge. We run north, she said. There's a tower buried in the hills. I can send the truth from there. He checked his bag. Low ammo, but enough to hold a fight if needed. She checked her energy blade, still strong. They took one last breath and moved across the stones like shadows. Fast, Silent, focused, the soldiers searched the canyon but found nothing. The vault was already sealed, one of them cursed. Another reported to command. Target escaped. Unknown direction. Orders? The voice replied coldly. Find them. Use everything. But by the time they began the sweep, the human and the alien girl were already over the next ridge. Each step carried a message, not of fear, but of defiance. She held the truth. He held the line. And the stars were finally watching. They crossed the rocky slope with fast, quiet steps. The desert wind howled around them, lifting sand into the air. The human scanned ahead with sharp eyes. He saw the edge of a broken tower rising in the distance, rusted, tilted, but still standing. The alien girl followed closely. Her body was tired, but her spirit was strong. She gripped the blade across her back. The data in her device was safe. The truth lived inside it. But unless they reached the tower and sent the signal, it meant nothing. The sun dipped behind the rocks. Shadows stretched across the sand. Night was close. And with it came dangers that hunted by sound. The human stopped near a ridge and pointed to the ground. Tracks, fresh, heavy boots. The enemy had already passed through. They moved carefully. Now, each step placed with care. The tower was 3 hills away, but each hill could hide a sniper. The human motioned for silence. The girl crouched low. She used her scanner. A faint pulse revealed motion near the base of the tower. 2 guards stood by a broken shuttle. They wore dark armor and carried stun cannons. Not elite. Scouts. The real strike force must be near. The girl whispered, "If we wait too long, they'll call more. We need to hit fast." The human nodded. He studied the path. A narrow side trail led behind the tower, steep but hidden. He drew a quick map in the sand. She understood. He would flank. She would distract. No time for rest. No time for mistakes. They split at the rocks. She stepped into the open slowly. The scouts noticed and raised weapons. "Identify," one barked. She didn't reply. She raised her hands slowly. The blade slid from her back and locked in her grip. Then she dashed forward with a sharp cry. The guards fired. Sand exploded around her. She rolled and swung the blade. The first guard went down. Sparks flashed as her weapon cut through armor. The second turned to fire. But the human dropped from the cliff and struck him with the butt of his rifle. It was over in seconds. They dragged the bodies into the shuttle wreck and disabled the scout beacon. The tower stood before them. Its door was sealed. The girl stepped up and placed her hand on the pad. It blinked, then opened with a slow hiss. Inside, dust covered everything. The walls flickered with weak light. Old machines lined the room. Screens dark, panels broken. She rushed to the control desk. Her fingers moved fast. The system was barely alive, but it responded to her touch. The human stood guard at the door. His rifle pointed at the ridge. He knew the signal would light up the sky. He also knew it would bring enemies, but he didn't move. He didn't blink. He would hold the line as long as needed. The screen lit up. "Emergency channel open," it said. She inserted the device and uploaded the data. Images flooded the system. The truth. Ancient maps. Lost records. The crimes of those who hunted her. All now racing through satellites into deep space. She breathed hard. "It's done," she whispered. "The galaxy will know. They can't stop it now." A sound echoed from the hill. Engines. At least 3 ships closing in. Dust lifted in a wide arc. The human looked at her. "We hold here until backup arrives, or until the end." She moved to the window and stood beside him. Together they looked down at the storm forming below. The ship circled. Troops dropped from the air. The tower shook under the pressure of wind and steel. But neither of them stepped back. The human placed charges along the stairs. He would not let the enemy take this place. If they came too close, they would burn. She readied her blade. Her breathing was calm. This tower is a beacon now, she said. They'll try to crush it before it lights more fires. The first wave arrived. Soldiers marched forward with shields and rifles. The human fired a warning shot. It hit one in the leg. The rest took cover. A rocket launched and hit the outer wall. The tower groaned but held. He gritted his teeth and fired again. She leapt from the window and landed on a flat roof. From above, she slashed through two enemies before they could react. They screamed. More followed. She ducked and struck with deadly grace. The wind carried her battle cry across the sands. Below, the human kept firing. Every round counted. Every second mattered. He didn't need orders. He didn't need reason. He had chosen his side. And he would not fall while she still fought. Suddenly, a flash tore through the clouds. A ship with white markings descended fast. Not enemy, rescue. The girl's message had reached someone. A fleet, small but armed. Enough to shift the tide. She saw it too, her eyes lit with hope. Help is here, she called. He nodded once, then turned back to the stairs. More enemies climbed up. But now they were running out of time. The truth was out. The signal was sent. And as the enemy pressed forward, the girl raised her blade again, not just to survive, but to defend the light she had reignited. The sky roared as the allied ship descended. Its engines cut through the air like blades. Lights blinked from its side. A new symbol glowed across its hull. It wasn't from her people. It wasn't human. It was something new. A mark that meant unity. The girl stood on the roof, her blade glowing. Below her, enemy soldiers retreated toward the rocks. Some fired in panic. Others tried to signal back, but their lines had gone silent. Their command structure had collapsed the moment the truth was broadcast. The human watched from the tower door. His rifle was empty now. He held a pulse grenade in one hand and a metal pipe in the other. He had prepared to die. But now death had taken a step back. Reinforcements had arrived. The line had held long enough. Ropes dropped from the descending ship. Armored allies slid down fast. They landed between the tower and the enemy. Their weapons fired in clean bursts. Red beams struck the desert floor. The enemy scattered like insects under a torch. The girl jumped from the roof and rolled across the sand. She came up fast and stood beside the human. He looked at her, face dirty and eyes sharp. She gave him a nod. He returned it without words. No speech was needed between them anymore. One of the armored soldiers approached. His helmet shifted to reveal a scaled face. Not human, not like her either. A third species, one of the silent watchers. "We heard your call," he said. "We saw the truth. The core worlds are no longer safe. But neither are they silent." She stepped forward. "Then you'll help us protect this message," the soldier nodded. "Yes, and more. We've shared it. It's already spreading. Every hidden system, every neutral colony, they're waking up. The empire that hunted you is cracking. They can't erase what is now seen." The human stepped back and watched the horizon. Enemy ships were pulling away. The last few troops ran for cover. Some dropped their weapons. Others tried to vanish into the dunes. He didn't chase. He knew better. Sometimes retreat is its own punishment. He sat on a broken step and pulled off his gloves. His fingers were cut and bruised. He poured water over them and let the dust wash away. The girl sat beside him. Her shoulders slumped. She was exhausted. But her eyes still held fire. "You could have left me in the desert," she said. "You had no reason to stay." He looked at her, then shook his head. "I don't need reasons. I just saw someone worth saving." For a moment, silence wrapped around them, not the silence of fear, but the quiet that comes after victory. The kind where the wind carries peace, not danger. The allied soldiers circled the tower. They set up shields and pulse barriers. One called out that another wave might come, but this time it would find them ready. This time the girl would not run, and the human would not let her fall. They stood and walked into the tower again. The control room flickered with weak lights. She checked the console. The message still pulsed through the beacon. Her people's story now lived in every corner of the stars, carved in code. Protected by witnesses. We need to rebuild, she said. Not just my culture, but something better. Something shared. The human picked up a metal shard from the floor. It had a symbol on it, the same one marked on the new ship. Then let's start here, he said. A place where the desert gave birth to something new. A noise echoed from behind them. A small ship approached from the north. It flew low. A private vessel. Old, patched, but fast. It landed nearby. The hatch opened. A group of beings stepped out. Mixed species. Civilians, survivors. People who had heard the call. The girl smiled. They're coming, all of them. One by one, the human looked at the crowd gathering, faces tired but hopeful. Many were armed. All had purpose. He turned back to the girl. Then we'll need a name for this place. She looked at the tower. Broken, but still standing, then at the sky. Still wide and endless. Call it Dawnspire, she said. Because the night didn't win here. The allied soldier approached once more. We'll hold the line, and we'll spread your story further. There's no going back now. They will come for you again. But they'll find more than just a girl and a man. He looked toward the others, gathering on the sands. They'll find an army built from truth. And in the center of that truth stood the girl who once crawled through sand, dying. And the man who gave her water without asking why. Together they had broken a silence that lasted for generations. And the stars, once blind, now watched with open eyes. Asterisk Dawnspire rose from the desert like a scar turned into a symbol. What was once a crumbling tower now held solar panels, scanners, and reinforced walls. People from many worlds had come to rebuild it. Some came with tools. Others came with weapons. But all came with purpose. The girl stood on the upper platform, looking down at the growing camp. Ships landed and lifted off each hour. Supplies flowed in. Fighters arrived quietly, offering loyalty. Old soldiers, young scouts. Civilians who could no longer stay silent. Her story had awakened more than just old memories. Beside her, the human adjusted the solar reflectors. He didn't speak much these days. But when he did, others listened. His name spread through the desert like fire, not as a warrior, but as the man who chose to stand when no one else would. She often wondered what would have happened if he had walked away that day, if he had ignored the girl in the sand, if he had taken his water and moved on. But he didn't, and now the stars were different because of that choice. The data she released had changed everything. Old records once buried were now open. Systems that had bowed in fear now rose in resistance. The empire that hunted her was still strong. But it was no longer unquestioned. Dawnspire became a broadcast center. From here, messages flowed through the blackness of space. Some were warnings, others were calls for peace. But every signal carried a symbol, the blade and the flask. A reminder that kindness and courage could reshape fate. One night, under a clear sky, a visitor arrived. She was old, cloaked in deep blue robes. Her eyes were dim but sharp. She called herself a seer from the outer belt. She had crossed 5 sectors to find the girl who carried the vault's blood. They sat together inside the chamber where the console once flickered. The seer placed a crystal on the table. "This belongs to your line," she said. "It contains the last map. The path to the true core." The girl held the crystal in her palm. It pulsed warm. Her translator buzzed. A message played. A voice from her childhood. One she hadn't heard since. Before the crash, her mother. A keeper of truth. Her words filled the room like light. If you are hearing this, it means you lived. It means the desert did not take you. It means someone chose to save you. And because of that, hope still burns. She lowered the crystal and looked at the human. He stood quietly by the door. He didn't ask what was said. He only waited for her to speak. That was always his way. We have a new path now, she said. There's more out there. A place they don't want us to find. But I think it's time we go. He nodded once, no question. No delay, she smiled softly. Then turned back to the seer. Will you help guide the others while we're gone? The old woman bowed her head. Until the suns fall. I will keep. The light burning, preparations began the next morning. A ship was chosen. Fast, small, and quiet. Volunteers packed gear. Maps were loaded. Coordinates set. The mission was not for battle. It was for truth. But truth often required strength. To carry. Before leaving, she walked the edge of Dawnspire once more. Every corner now held memory. The stone where she collapsed. The fire pit where he handed her water. The slope where she first saw his eyes in the sun. All burned into the ground like promises. He stood beside her. No words, just presence. She handed him a new blade, forged by allies. Sharper than the desert wind, he handed her a folded cloth. Inside was the original flask, cleaned, sealed. A reminder of where they began. They stepped onto the ship. The engines hummed. The door closed. Behind them. As the vessel lifted into the sky, the people below raised their fists and weapons. A silent vow passed through the air. The journey would not be forgotten. In orbit, stars blinked like ancient watchers. The ship joined a quiet lane and disappeared into the dark. No banners, no sound. Just a girl with a blade and a man with calm eyes heading toward what the Empire feared most. They did not know what waited at the end. Maybe ruins, maybe power, maybe only silence. But they knew they had to walk the path. Not for revenge. Not for fame. But because someone had to carry the truth to the final door. And far behind them, in the heart of the desert, the tower stood like a spine of hope. Dawnspire, born from dust. Built from blood. Guarded by memory. And glowing with the light of two souls who refused to let the stars stay blind.